Stitch asked from the back. He could not see past Racer's chute. Bet they're flying out of here. They've been doing a lot of erratic shit like that. Suggestions? Kolt asked quickly into his mic. He knew to get the input of his sergeants at a critical moment like this. Slapshot said, "There isn't much sense in linking up with officials if the hijacked plane isn't going to hang around." And then Stitch chimed in, "Racer, you have execute authority. Why don't we hit it?" It was true, Raynor had pried execute authority from Colonel Weber, the head of Delta Force. This allowed Raynor, as the military commander at the scene, the flexibility to call for a hasty and extremist takedown of the aircraft, if he saw the opportunity to do so or if he felt the necessity to try, like if the terrorists, or crows in Delta parlance, started shooting hostages before official approval for Delta's mission came from the JOC. Still, Kolt wasn't sure what Stitch was getting at. He keyed his mic. Hit it? While it's moving? "We can land on the roof and head for the cockpit. I've got the harpoon. If we go in single file, we can breach the escape hatch. If we increase our descent speed, we can be inside before they go throttle up." "Have you guys done that before?" Kolt asked incredulously. "Not on a moving aircraft, and only in training back at Bragg, boss," Slapshot answered. But he agreed with his fellow sergeant's assessment. "We aren't going to get another chance at this. If the plane isn't there, then the TV crews might see us, and if they film us dropping on the tarmac, that will get back to the crows in the jet. Might just piss them off enough to kill some more passengers." "Now or never," Stitch said. "What's the call, Racer?" Kolt asked. "What about Digger?" Now Digger chimed in. Though he was the youngest of the team and perhaps the most fit overall, he possessed one potential handicap to the operation. Where his lower right leg used to be, he now wore a titanium prosthesis. Kolt could not imagine how he could run along the roof of a moving aircraft with a leg made out of metal. "No sweat, boss. I've got this," Digger said. He sounded confident and eager. Kolt's operational brain trust had spoken, and their vote was unanimous. Still, this was his first hit since returning to the unit just 2 months prior, and Colonel Weber had made it crystal clear to Raynor that he needed to change his ways. There was no room in the modern Delta Force for the Tier 1 wild antics that had gotten him in hot water in the past, and Weber had reminded Kolt numerous times that he was on incredibly thin ice. Nevertheless, Kolt and his boys had been the alert squadron at Fort Bragg when this hostage crisis unfolded, so Kolt and his team had been called to bat. "Make your decision, Raynor," he said to himself in a silent shout. 3 seconds later, he pressed the push-to-talk button on his chest rig again. "Let's hit it. Weber's going to have my ass," he thought, but right now he had much bigger fish to fry. In the Joint Operations Center at Forward Operating Base Yukon in Bagram, Afghanistan, the chow hall, the gym, and the movie tent stood empty. Right now, everyone with access was stacked at the back of the JOC watching the shocking footage displayed on a single large plasma screen at the front of the room. A Predator drone's night vision camera caught the huge commercial aircraft moving slowly through the darkness toward the runway, and its satellite uplink broadcast the ghostly images to the screen at the JOC. Racer and his team were not in the picture. They were still high in the air on their descent, and their drop zone was out of the camera's current field of view. The agency guys at the airfield in New Delhi were on the other end of a Thuraya sat phone, and their running commentary was piped through the speakers of the JOC. The CIA's liaison officer stood near Colonel Jeremy Weber, holding a phone to his ear and passing on additional information to the head of Delta Force. The tension in the air infected everyone. All were frozen in amazement at the huge plasma monitor referred to in the JOC as Kill TV. The men and women stood in rapt attention as the hijacked aircraft rolled steadily down the taxiway, clearly moving for takeoff on runway 29. A few seconds later, the Predator downlink went fuzzy. The eye in the sky had blinked. It was a mechanical glitch that seemed to be common with that aerial asset at exactly those moments when clear observation was desperately needed. The Kill TV feed came back up a moment later, just as the silhouetted figures of 4 men under 3 parachutes passed between the 767 and the camera's lens. Black, hot figures flying through the air with the heat of their bodies trapped in the chutes above them, creating a faint umbrella shape. "Holy shit, there they are!" exclaimed the operations sergeant major, breaking the silence that had fallen over the JOC. They should have been landing far back on the tarmac, but it looked to everyone at Bagram as if the Delta team were making for the runway itself. "What the hell are they doing?" The 3 chutes sailed purposefully toward the plane on the ground, which meant only one thing to Colonel Jeremy Weber. The men were not continuing on the drop zone on the now empty tarmac. No, it looked like... Weber cocked his head slightly. "Racer is assaulting." He said it in a clipped voice that indicated to everyone in the room that he was pissed. No one in the JOC was new to special operations or terrorist interdictions, but still many gasped in shock. Assaulting an aircraft as it sat at the end of the runway seconds from takeoff? Colonel Weber sat back in his chair. He was pissed, but he was not surprised. Kolt fucking Raynor, his man on the scene, had been a pseudo-insubordinate troop commander before he'd been kicked out of Delta 4 years ago. Now that he was back in the unit, there was little reason to expect anything but pseudo-insubordination now, even with all Weber's personal counseling of his wayward major. He stared silently at the downlink screen. Weber would have stopped Racer and the others if he had any control over this situation, but the Delta operator's audacious and daring actions effectively neutered any long-arm leadership, or micromanagement, since the JOC was 220 miles away from the action. Colonel Weber cleared his throat and in a confident and booming voice said, "All right, we seem to have a common operating picture and are now in a current operation with operators on target. Push the QRF of the airspace and air loiter 20 minutes out. Spin up the extraction fixed-wing aircraft ASAP and get me the SecDef on the red line." Immediately, several of the staff in the JOC went from statues of stone to blurs of activity. The quick reaction force choppers were ordered into the theater, the extraction aircraft were ordered ready, and secure comms with the Pentagon were established. Weber's confident orders turned to just the right authoritative tenor by decades of command.